Ebenezer Scrooge. Redemption sits at the very heart of Charles Dickens' Christmas ghost story, A Christmas Carol, and its protagonist, Ebenezer Scrooge, is one of the clearest examples of it ever written. When we first meet Scrooge, he is a cruel man. Dickens describes him as cold in body and spirit, someone who hoards wealth yet lives miserably. He underpays his clerk, Bob Cratchit, despises charity, and sneers at the poor as a surplus population who should work in the workhouses or die. Christmas, to Scrooge, is wasteful sentimentality, a disruption to business. His worldview is summed up in his famous catchphrase, "Bah, humbug." But then comes the reckoning. On Christmas night, Scrooge is visited by four spirits, sent to set him straight. First comes the ghost of Jacob Marley, his former business partner, condemned to an eternity of chains forged from his own greed. Marley warns Scrooge that the same fate awaits him if he does not change. Next comes the ghost of Christmas past, who shows Scrooge the boy he once was, lonely, abandoned, but capable of love. He sees how his growing obsession with money slowly strangled that love, including the love he once had for his fiancée. The ghost of Christmas present forces Scrooge to witness the consequences of his behavior in the lives of others. He sees Bob Cratchit's family struggling and learns that Tiny Tim will die unless something changes. Finally, the ghost of Christmas yet to come shows Scrooge where his greed and selfishness will lead: a lonely death and a neglected grave, servants stealing his belongings, debtors celebrating his passing, and the Cratchit family destroyed by the loss of Tiny Tim. Horrified, Scrooge begs for a chance to change the future, and he is given one. He wakes up on Christmas Day, transformed. From then on, he chooses to live a life of generosity and compassion. And most importantly, he doesn't change out of fear alone, but out of understanding. He takes care of the Cratchits and donates to a charity fund. His redemption is so complete that he is said to have become the very embodiment of the Christmas spirit. Derek Vinyard. Derek Vinyard's redemption arc in American History X is one of the most powerful in cinema, not just because of how much he changes, but because of how the cycle of hate continues despite his transformation. Derek starts as a violent neo-Nazi, radicalized by his father's death and manipulated by white supremacist ideology. His younger brother, Danny, idolizes him, and he is slowly following in his footsteps. Derek brutally murders two black burglars, one of them in the most brutal fashion, and he is sentenced to prison. It is in prison that Derek is forced to confront the reality of his beliefs. At first, he clings to his ideology, but over time, he sees the hypocrisy in the very people he once considered his own. After being betrayed by his fellow white supremacists in the showers, and after befriending a black inmate, Derek begins to change. He realizes that the world isn't as simple as he once believed. When he's released, he's a different man. He rejects his past and desperately tries to save Danny from the same path. But it's too late. In a cruel twist, Danny is shot by a black student he previously antagonized. Derek redeems himself, but it's too late to save his brother from the self-perpetuating cycle of violence he himself once was a part of. His arc is powerful because it shows that while individuals can change, racism and violence don't die so easily. Darth Vader. It's hard to make a list about redemption arcs and not include Darth Vader. You already know the story. Jedi prodigy, the chosen one. Falls to the dark side. Murders younglings. Tries to save Padme and indirectly causes her death. He terrorizes the galaxy for 20 years in a cool black suit and is voiced by James Earl Jones. He cuts off his own son's hand, and then, at the very end, he throws the Emperor down a reactor shaft. Redeemed. Or what? The universe certainly seems to think so. Vader dies, and moments later, he's back as a glowing Force spirit, standing peacefully beside Obi-Wan and Yoda, all smiling. I assume that means he's not burning in Jedi Hell, where he so obviously belongs. Apparently all is just forgiven. One good act at the finish line, and Vader escapes accountability for genocide, mass repression, and decades of cruelty. Vader is complicit in the murder of literal billions, who died on Alderaan, He is responsible for the annihilation of the Jedi Order, the downfall of the Republic, and he has personally murdered more children than Freddy Krueger. None of that can ever be undone or forgiven. You can argue that he is redeemed from Luke's perspective. Vader's final choice obviously matters to his son. He saves Luke. He chooses love over power. That moment is real, and it's emotionally powerful. But to his other child Leia, he doesn't really apologize for murdering her adoptive family and everyone else on her planet. Vader's final act doesn't balance the scales. It can't. But it's all he has left to give, and maybe that's the point. His redemption is personal, not moral. It heals one relationship, not a universe. Boromir. In Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings, Boromir is often remembered as the man who tried to take the ring. But that single moment is the central part of one of the most tragic and deeply human redemption arcs in fantasy. Boromir isn't corrupted by ambition or lust for power. He's burdened by duty. As the steward of Gondor's eldest son, he spent his life in a kingdom under siege, watching his people bleed to defend a crumbling wall against darkness. With no aid, no hope, and no end in sight. Then he's told salvation lies not in strength, but in letting a fragile, barefoot stranger carry the one weapon that might save them. And he accepts it. He joins the Fellowship, he protects Frodo, and he follows the plan. But the ring knows his heart, full of love for his land, his father, his brother, and full of fear that he'll fail them. It whispers to him, and it wears him down. And in a single moment, Boromir breaks. The ring overwhelms him, and he tries to take it from Frodo. Boromir was not himself, and his actions were not his own. The instant passes, and horror replaces desire. Boromir doesn't excuse himself. He immediately knows that he was wrong. That is where his redemption begins. Horrified, he searches for Frodo, no longer in order to take the ring, but to protect him. When he can't find him, he finds Merry and Pippin, and gives his life defending them against impossible odds. Arrow after arrow, Boromir keeps fighting. For all his mistakes, for all his weakness, Boromir dies the way he lived, trying to protect others, redeeming himself in the eyes of the Fellowship, and most readers. The Grinch. The Grinch hated Christmas. No one quite knows why. It could be his head wasn't screwed on just right. It could be, perhaps, his shoes were too tight. But most likely of all, his heart was 2 sizes too small. Created by Dr. Seuss, this pear-like green creature lives alone atop a mountain overlooking Whoville. The Grinch watches the Who celebrate everything he despises. They sing too loudly. They feast too happily. They are too happy. And the Grinch, suffering this Christmas nonsense for 53 years, is now permanently irritated, and he can't stand it any longer. So he does what any bitter misanthrope would do. He decides to steal Christmas. Disguised as Santa, aided by his loyal and abused dog, Max, the Grinch sneaks into Whoville on Christmas Eve and steals every present, every decoration, every last crumb of festive joy. He's certain that when morning comes, Christmas will finally be dead. But then, it isn't. The Whos wake up and sing anyway, just like they always do. And in that moment, the Grinch realizes something profound. Christmas was never about the presents, or the Christmas tree, or the big, beautiful roast. It was about community, kindness, and shared joy. Things he spent his entire life rejecting. That realization quite literally changes his heart, and it grows 3 sizes. He saves the stolen gifts, returns them, and for the first time, joins the Whos in their celebrations. The Grinch redeems himself by righting his wrong, and finally letting himself belong. Sidney Carton. In Charles Dickens' A Tale of Two Cities, Sidney Carton is a man who seems beyond redemption, a legal genius who lets others take credit for his work since he is too busy with drinking and apathy. A man with no ambition and no purpose. By all accounts, he's a failure. Then he meets Lucy Manette, and everything changes. He falls in love with her, the kind of selfless love that will make you do anything. For the first time, he wants to be better, to be worthy of loving her. But Lucy marries Charles Darnay, a man who looks just like Carton, but represents everything Carton believes he'll never be: honorable, respectable, loved. When Darnay is imprisoned during the French Revolution and sentenced to death, Carton makes a choice. He uses their resemblance to take Darnay's place at the guillotine. He sacrifices his life to ensure that Lucy can live in peace with her family. It's not just a sacrifice. It's the first truly purposeful act of his life. His final thoughts: "It is a far, far better thing that I do than I have ever done," aren't poetic exaggeration. They're the simple truth of a man who, in death, finally becomes everything he wished he had been in life. Sidney Carton dies with no legacy, no recognition, and no reward, except knowing that he mattered, that he saved a life, that he became, at last, someone worth remembering, at least by the woman he loved. Redeemed. Zuko. In Avatar: The Last Airbender, Zuko is introduced as an exiled prince obsessed with capturing the Avatar. Zuko starts as a villain, angry and bitter. He is desperate to regain his honor. But over the course of the series, he undergoes one of the greatest transformations ever written. Zuko's story is defined by struggle. He is banished by his father, Fire Lord Ozai, for speaking out of turn. Zuko is left with a single mission: capture Aang, the Avatar, and restore his own place in the Fire Nation. His entire identity is built on this goal. But beneath his anger is a boy who is deeply conflicted, shaped by the cruelty of his father and the kindness of his mother and Uncle Iroh. As he pursues Aang, Zuko slowly begins to question everything. He sees the suffering caused by the Fire Nation, grapples with his own moral compass, and tries again and again to do the right thing. Yet every time he gets close, he stumbles, unable to break free from his father's influence. His defining moment comes when he finally rejects his father and chooses his own path. He joins Team Avatar as an ally, working to undo the damage he once caused. He trains Aang, fights his sister Azula, and ultimately takes the throne, as a leader seeking peace. Zuko's redemption is so powerful because it feels earned. He doesn't change overnight. He struggles, he fails, he learns. And in the end, he is not just a better person. He became the Fire Lord his nation truly needed. Gerd Wiesler. In the German movie The Lives of Others, the loyal Stasi officer Gerd Wiesler lives in 1980s East Germany. Wiesler's job is to watch, listen, and destroy lives in service of the state. He is cold and methodical and unquestioning. A true man of the state. That is, until he begins monitoring playwright Georg Dreimann and his lover, actress Christa Maria. At first, Wiesler sees Dreimann as a potential dissident. But as he listens in on their lives, something unexpected happens. He begins to care. He witnesses their love, their struggles, and the injustices they endure under the oppressive East German regime. Then, Wiesler realizes that Dreimann is not being targeted for political reasons, but because a government official wants Christa Maria for himself. Wiesler quietly intervenes. His transformation is subtle but undeniable. Instead of reporting Dreimann's dissent, he covers for him. When Dreimann secretly writes an article exposing East Germany's suicide epidemic, Wiesler falsifies reports and erases any trace of the crime. But redemption comes at a cost. Wiesler is caught, and he is demoted to a position of steaming letters, a meaningless, degrading job that ends his career in Stasi. Years later, after the fall of the Berlin Wall, Dreimann learns the truth. A Stasi officer, once his enemy, saved his life. Wiesler now lives a quiet, lonely existence as a mailman, forgotten by the world. But when he finds Dreimann's new book, Sonata for a Good Man, dedicated to the unknown Stasi man who saved him, he buys a copy. When asked if he wants it gift-wrapped, he simply replies, "No, it's for me." Okay, so that's it for now. Let me know in the comments which character you think has the greatest redemption arc and why. Thanks for watching. Cheers.